Welcome to Saints on Cinema. I'm Tim Wild here with my lovely co-host Ashley and Josh. That was good. We are here because I was walking down Walmart the other day and I saw Life magazine saying that it was the 34th anniversary, 75th anniversary of the Miracle on 34th Street. And a couple weeks ago, Ash and Joshly and I just called you Ash. Is that okay, Ashley?
Well, you called me Joshly, so that was fun.
Yeah, that works because you're a little effeminate sometimes. Anyway, we're talking about what we were going to do for December for Christmas discussions, and I wanted to do some classic Christmas movies because there's always crappy Christmas movies that come out every year, and we wouldn't need to talk about something older. And then this gave us a great opportunity to talk about what is it? Miracle on 34th Street. By the way, it's not called The Miracle. It's just Miracle on 34th Street. And I proposed it to you guys to see if you wanted to do it. And you both said, yeah, that'd be good. And none of you were like, no. So I'm hoping you guys have a lot of opinions and thoughts and memories and fondness to bring to the table, because I'm relying on that. Otherwise, I'm just going to ramble, and I'm sick of rambling in all of our videos because that's what I do, like right now.
Are you sick of it? Because you keep doing it.
Yeah.
No, I don't get sick of it.
It's good that you're aware.
Everyone listening gets sick of it.
Awareness is key.
Yeah. I did my first podcast. I mean, I've done a couple now, but I did my first podcast on my new podcast channel. And as I listened back to the 2 hours, 20 minutes discussion, I'm like, holy cow, I just talk so much.
You're just now realizing that.
No. It's just that
Tim had his awakening.
We have had 130 something episodes.
This is episode 140. Can you believe it? Wow, 140 out of 175 we've recorded.
Yeah, the other 35 are the ones I wanted to do.
Well, at least you recorded the ones you wanted to do. The ones I wanted to do just get shut down.
Oh, there you go.
That's a call on you, Josh. That was you. We did neglect to do one that you wanted to do. That was all of us. But anyway, no one cares. I was just going to say, the reason I bring that up is because with you guys and other guests that we have, Lance or whoever, they will talk and they help me to like have a break in when I have to say something. I just feel like I fill up air, not fill up air. I mean, I fill dead air. I probably fill up air as well. But I just talking if I have a guest that's not used to like pushing and running conversation, then I talk a lot. So I noticed that. And I'm not talking about my first guest, Gary, on my channel. I'm just saying that's, I think, what happened. I was just kind of getting the nerves and the kinks out, feeling the.
Well, the thing is though, like, just on an aside of that, I've done, I have my podcast and I've done about 14 of them. And I found that I did the same thing. Like when the first one, when it's just me interviewing somebody, it's not like here we're all talking and conversing just like if we were just hanging out. So it's a little different, but when you're actually interviewing somebody, it's so different. And it took, I feel like I get better with every podcast I do. I get a little bit better. Like I feel like now my 13th and 14th episodes, and it could have also been that the topics were ones I've been really passionate about all the ones I've done, but I was really tuned in to the last few, and I felt like they went really, really well. And I just now feel like I'm getting there. So it's just going to be time in learning how to just let someone ask open-ended questions and letting somebody go, and not being afraid of a little bit of dead air to let them keep going. Right. Stuff like that.
And when we've done interviews on this channel, like when we had Lincoln on and we had, what's his name from Cobra Kai? Bo, yeah. When he was on, like, I feel like those were much better in sharing the airtime. Felt a lot better about that. But for some reason I just felt all nervous doing my own podcast because I talk here constantly and I'm not that worried about it.
No, I was the same way. I was the same way. Not so much with the first two, because I felt like the first two I did were really very similar to what we do here, just because they were my friends, and I was kind of like, I purposely picked them first because I knew that like I knew them really well and it could be a good conversation. And then I had a third one with professors and like doctors of specific areas, PhDs. And I think I called you right before, Tim, and I was like, I am so scared about what I'm doing. People, I was super nervous because I didn't want to
people sound like that have higher platform, a lot more experience doing presentations and doing interviews and stuff with professionals, right. And you're like, I'm gonna get on there. Who knows what
I'll tell you what though. Here's a recommendation for both of you if you ever want to start your own podcast. If you don't want to talk at all, PhDs, like teachers have no problem pontificating. Yeah. I mean, like that was the thing. Like Patrick, he was great. We had a great back and forth, and we were both really long-winded, so it went a little bit longer. But yeah, he had no problem going on and on, like expounding on an answer, which was really helpful for me. And then the two I did when I did the one about Iran, women in Iran, the same thing. Like they had no problem pontificating about and exploring the subject, where I just had to ask a question and they would go, and so if you're having that problem and you want to sit back a little bit, talk to them, right? And they'll definitely, find a teacher or professor somewhere, and they'll definitely help you.
Well, Josh, last time we were the three of us were on doing a discussion. We talked about your podcast for a little bit, but then we didn't drop the information. So you just want to take a second, just in part of instead of our personal study, was let you just share how your podcast is going, what it's called, and where it's at.
Yeah, so it's just I couldn't come up with anything exciting, so I just called it the Ed Lowe Podcast, and it's really just a human interest podcast. We just talk about different subjects that I'm interested in. So we've had, I had a therapist come on who talks about narcissism and faith crisis. I had Patrick Mason, who is the Leonard Arrington Chair at Utah State University on Mormon Studies. He came on and he talked about faith, church history, and faith crisis. This week I'm having on a trans woman who has a Muslim background, who runs a wrestling promotion that centers around inclusiveness and LGBT issues and some video game humor. And so, and it's done very, very well. And she's thriving, like she's really thriving despite the difficulties that she's been, the kind of the hate that she gets just based on her status as a trans woman. So she's going to come on and she's going to talk about what her experience was like becoming a trans woman, what it was like, or being a trans woman rather, her experience in wrestling. We've gotten a lot of good questions, so that's been fun. Yeah. I'm on YouTube and Spotify. I can't figure out how to get on Apple Podcasts yet, so if anybody has an idea, they can shoot that to me. But yeah, but it's been fun. Like I've had wrestlers on, I've had professors on talking about women in Iran. I've talked to a single woman who worked her way all the way through law school, African American woman with 2 kids, who actually divorced her, who kicked her husband out, who was on drugs 2 weeks into law school and still completed. I mean, very, a lot of motivational stories. I talked to one of our friends, Mike Gregson, for 3 hours on his journey through his ups and downs. So yeah, it's just like I said, it's all sorts of stuff. I got some really cool guests coming on. So it's been fun, and I've had a good time just kind of exploring and learning. It's different than this,
Yeah, so was mine. It was very unique. I just wanted to pop in. Let's see. Show my screen. No, not that screen. There's your podcast for anyone.
Yeah, there you go. Hey. So that one was one of my favorites, because that was my wrestling trainer, Johnny Jeter, who's a former WWE tag team champion, with his tag team partner, Mike Mondo. And we just went on for about an hour and a half just talking wrestling and their experience in the wrestling business and how they got started. Really cool stuff. And, yeah, if you follow us on Facebook and Instagram, I always post like 1-minute clips of what we're doing, so you can get a flavor for the type of stuff we talk about. And then I always, like a 2 or 3 days before a podcast is about to drop, I always give an opportunity for someone, if they want to ask an anonymous question on the topic, they can, and I try to get them all in there. I had Tony Overbay on, and I had to half of them because we just, I mean, he's so engaging, but also so robust in the way he talks.
Yeah.
That it's like it was hard to get through. So he's agreed to come back and finish the conversation. So, yeah, it's been fun. I mean, like I said, I'm at the point now where I'm starting to kind of reach a little bit higher to try to get some more kind of people well known rather than just friends I know, and so we'll see where that goes. But yeah, follow us.
That's awesome. Yeah.
One other thing you would appreciate, and you kind of saw this, Tim. So with Patrick, I posted now like 4 or 5 like 1 minute reels on TikTok, and one really caught fire. like the antagonist, the Mormon antagonist community really caught hold of one, and it was a clip of Patrick explaining that LDS theology has never been that prophets are infallible, meaning that they don't make mistakes.
Right.
And man, like I think it's up to like 150 comments now.
Right.
And just a bunch of people. And I'll engage, I'll ask them. I'll just go, are you just trolling, or do you want to have a constructive conversation? And then you really can flush out if they're just being jerks, or if they like really want to talk about the subject. And I've had some actually pretty good conversations and ended up with some followers as a result. So
nice.
So if you want,
that's when I listened to that podcast. That's the only one I've listened to the whole thing. On confession, I guess, whatever. I'm not obliged to listen to you. But no, I support it, and I subscribe I think most places. I'm not going to go into download it on programs, but I listened to that one. It was really good, but I was surprised. I did pull it because you posted something about that on Facebook, and I went in to see which post it was on TikTok and see what they were saying. I was floored, not like shocked really. It's TikTok. It's just as toxic as Twitter, but I was surprised more that you were engaging with the people, and good for you, because it's a discussion that you want to continue to have off camera too. It's not just here's a presentation, you guys hash it out later. Well, you're willing to talk to these people, and that's awesome.
Well, I think the thing was I started the podcast with the idea that I have all these friends, and like I said, like I have friends like Patrick Mason, who is the I would say arguably the most quoted Mormon scholar of our generation. Right. I mean, anytime the church has got some controversial article in the news, he's quoted in it, or he's on every documentary. I mean, he's written books. But then I also have a trans friend, who's a trans woman in pro wrestling, and these people would really never get together if it wasn't for me. So I figure, since I know all these people and all these different groups, if I could get them on and possibly get all of my friends and even more people to hear what they're going to say from their point of view, maybe we get a little more understanding. Right now, it's just everybody just is in an echo chamber where they just spew names at each other. And that's why when they shoot something off on those TikToks, I always just say, so are you trying to engage, or are you just trolling? And then some of them will say, okay, and I'll go, well, explain what you mean then. Tell me what you mean. And that's where some of them come down. And then I've seen some of them, I go, I actually agree with you. Like I had one person who said they felt like if the church would just apologize for some of these past mistakes, it would really be helpful. And I said, yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't think that means that they're not prophets. You know what I mean? But I agree. Like if there was something that someone said that was hurtful and that was clearly a mistake, the church should apologize for that, and I think that's the kind of, I think we all have more in common than we realize. And if we sat down and actually had a conversation without the because there were some of them that just went on there and they're just like, you guys are just full of crap or whatever. And I just be like, all right, well, I mean, I don't know what to do with
that. You have anything really to contribute.
Right. So that's
yeah, there's a sample right there. That's a taste of what you get on the Edlo podcast. So check it out, support him, watch, subscribe.
And one of these days, Tim's going to come on and we're going to talk about his story, his controversial story. Yeah. And we're going to have Ashley on to talk about her controversial story on yoga.
I don't think I really have a controversial story, but anyway,
Ashley's going to come on to talk about her fascination with witchcraft and tarot cards. So.
I'm not going to be in that conversation with Ashley. I value this partnership and association.
You don't want to end a friendship with your tarot cards.
Yeah, I have other friends that do that stuff and openly engage in full-on devil worship and witchcraft, and I want to hopefully get a chance to talk to them. But anyway, my channel, I'm fascinated with it. Really cool person. Anyway, we'll see. But I started my channel as complete opposite. Josh is trying to aspire up to get more or higher level interactions and conversations. It's not for status for his channel, but you want to engage with the more brighter minds and more published and alleged people. Not alleged. It's not right. What's the word?
Probably well known.
Well, that's not the word I was looking for, but that's the thing. Mine, on the other hand, is more ground level. I'm focusing on just the everyday person because I feel like everyone has a voice, something they can bring to the table, not just published or celebrated or well-educated or scholarly people. I'm not criticizing what you're doing. The experts are awesome, and that's awesome to do that. And I'll hopefully get some of them too. But I just come upon people like you guys and my friends that I have engaging conversations, and I feel like I can have just as fascinating a conversation at like a lunch with someone than having a bunch of scholars get together and like read the scriptures and talk about it, kind of a thing. So that's my angle. But it was a lot of fun. A very different tone than here, just like you said. And I said I'm not going to talk about movies or cereal or Superman, and then I don't know about Superman, but that's for my wild thoughts. But I'm excited about it. It'll be good.
Well, Ashley, so what's your podcast going to be about?
Yeah, so what's yours? Here's How to Yoga.
I will not be promoting a podcast since I'm not doing mine. But thank you for the opportunity.
Ashley does it out, and she's influential. She teaches and trains and works with people one-on-one and in classes and stuff. And you do a lot of stuff. You just don't do it online, but that's fine. You do this, and that's where we're more interested in you being here. So yoga.
Let me just throw this out there, and I'm not trying to convince you, but I think you would have a really interesting podcast because you're one of the things I like about both of you is that we all have very different views. We're all Mormon, LDS, whatever you want to call us. We're all there, but we all have very different viewpoints on what that means and how that works. It was kind of like what Tony said. He said to me on my podcast, he said, we want to get to a point where you have two people doing communion in the Catholic Church where one thinks it's literally the transfiguration and taking of the body and blood of Christ, and another person thinks it's a stale cracker or grape juice, but they're both still Catholic. And that's what we have here, is that all three of us have very different eclectic views of what it means to be a member of the church or what it means to just be a human in the world, like how we interact with the world. And I think Ashley's is actually very, very interesting the way that she does those things. She's I always joke with her that she's kind of a hippie, but she's like a very Mormon hippie, and there's so few of those in the world. I think you'd have a really interesting podcast. But anyway.
Oh, well, thank you.
I wouldn't watch it because it'll be all about fitness and yoga, and I don't care. I would support it, but I wouldn't watch it. Just like I don't watch Josh's. I'm like, whatever.
Tim would just get angry and be like, "That's not right." Wow, so many things to say. That was the best thing, actually, is Tim called me after listening to the Patrick podcast. And then he was like, I was just so angry because I had so many things that I wanted to interject and say. And I was like, that doesn't mean argue. 4 hours long if Tim was there.
That doesn't mean argue. That just means I was like, well, hold up. Before we move on, let's talk about that a little bit longer. Anyway. All right. Thanks for that. So Josh Edlow's the Edlow podcast, or just Edlow podcast?
Just Edlow podcast, yeah.
Edlow podcast. And Ashley, she's just wonderful. Watch her here. And Wild Discourse. Right now it's just on Facebook and YouTube. We'll see where it goes. Anyway, let's get started. Miracle on 34th Street. My mother died a couple years ago. And going through her library.
Boo. We don't like that.
Boo?
We don't like that she passed away.
Well, no, she did, but It's nice that you had more tact in saying it than I did. She died.
You're like, no, my mom just died.
Well, I'm fine because I know where she's at. But we'll talk about the spirit world another time.
Start the Miracle on 34th Street discussion. So my mom died.
Hey, there's real life stuff in this story. But anyway, we were going through her stuff, and my brother and I. She has like a big book collection. She was always reading a lot because they didn't have internet and stuff when she was in college and everything. And I found her copy of Miracle on 34th Street. This is third print, and it smells like the 60s.
Oh, I love the smell.
Wonderful, right? I wish I could make this a cologne.
What does the 60s book smell like?
80s books, 70s books. No, my grandmother or my grandparents, we lived with them since I was 11 until they died when I went on my mission and stuff. But like during that decade through high school and everything, all the corners of the house had old books from their old days, and I still have a bunch of them. There's some of their church books and stuff that I like their old editions, and also their personal copies. And so I have that smell all over, and it smells like wood, wood and 40-year-old dirt.
Nice.
But anyway, it's cool. But I flipped through here, not for this podcast, I have before, looking at the verbiage and the dialogue in certain scenes, because I think it's very interesting how they tell some of the dialogue in certain parts of the story. And I gotta say, the movie, hitting 75 years now, is pretty accurate to the book. There's not much deviation to the main scenes and the descriptions in there. So I mean, I don't have anything to pull up and quote. I just thought it's really cool that I have that third edition. It's kind of neat. Third printing. Not that they've had a lot of them. That was third printing in the 60s, and the book was a lot older than that. So anyway, but I also got this. I pulled this up. I flipping through it. Talks about the cast, how everyone got cast, and a little bit of the history between Macy's and Gimbels, which I didn't read through all of that. But it did have in here. Yeah, I wanted to finish reading that part, how the movie actually affected them. But one thing I thought was cool, and I'm not going to show it up here because you won't be able to see it very well, but it has in here a copy of the letter. It's right there. Of the letter from Gimbels endorsing their name being dropped in the script, because the movie has that relationship in the competition between Macy's and Gimbels. So before they made the movie, the studio sent the script to both companies to make sure they were okay with the way everything was represented, and they were. And I thought that was really fascinating. So I got to read that.
Yeah, I always find it really interesting when you can watch, read a book or watch a documentary or something like that where they talk about all of the intricacies. That's what I love about that show, The Movies That Made Us.
Yeah,
when you watch that and it talks about all the intricacies in getting the movie made. Or I've actually been following Quentin Tarantino's been on a lot of podcasts lately, and listening to him and how the process of getting a movie made and all the intricacies is super interesting.
Yeah. And they all have a story. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just a little bit, just a little things. Some of the things I watched most of it. I was trying to watch. I kept getting distracted, trying to get ready for this. I tried to watch today, but I've seen it so many times. Did either of you watch it this week, getting ready for this show? This week is only 10 hours old. But I mean, did you watch it in the last couple of days?
No, I haven't watched it in the last couple of days. And I got to say, I like Miracle on 34th Street. I really do, but it's not
top favorite.
Yeah, it's not something that if I miss it one year, it doesn't. I'm like, oh man, it's not like that. But I like it. If someone says let's watch Miracle on 34th Street, I'm not opposed to it. Yeah, I enjoy it.
It's not a boring watch. It never gets old. It's not just because it's a classic. It's entertaining. I feel Christmas spirit, heartfelt, all that stuff when I watch it. Did you watch it, Ashley, getting ready for this? Or you just
so my son actually put it on last week, and he wanted to watch it, which is big shocker. But yeah, so I watched it then. It's one of my favorites. I love it.
He's autistic and in tune with the spirit and everything. Of course, he's going to appreciate Miracle on 34th Street. Right. And it was the old one, or did you watch the crappy new ones?
I don't even own the crappy new one. No, it was the original. Right. And he even put on, because I have both. I have the color, the Technicolor, and I have the black and white, and he put on the black and white.
Yeah. Right. The question, how do you feel about that? The Technicolor versus the black and white? Because I feel
Ask you first.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, before I say what I feel, let's hear what you guys think.
Ask you first.
I like both. I think they did a really good job with the airbrushing. So I don't mind it at all.
when did they airbrush the Technicolor one? Was it like shortly after when color came out, or is it like in the 90s or something?
No. It was I remember watching the color version when I was younger, but that was like the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious when they did it, because what do you think about that, Tim?
Well, I'm saying it's 87. It looked 85, 87. Oh, in 1985, it became one of the first full-length black and white films to be colorized. So there you go, 85.
My birth year.
Hey, Josh and I were old men by then. We're in elementary school, causing trouble, not caring about Miracle on 34th Street.
do you prefer one or the other, Ashley?
No, I'll watch both. Typically every year. I like them both. And like, it's not necessarily like, I mean, obviously it's the same movie, but I do feel like there's like something different about them, and I like it.
Interesting.
I'll say that when I was pulling up on Disney Plus, I mean, I have it on DVD, but when I pulled it up on Disney Plus, the cover for the thumbnail that you click on or whatever, it's the cover for the colored version. And I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh, that sucks, but whatever. I got to watch it. And because it's not distracting, I'm not frustrated with it the way they did. Like Ashley said, it's really well done, the colorization, that it doesn't distract me. Some movies, the colorization bothers me. I can't think of examples right now, but there's a couple of movies that I would only want to watch the black and white version. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't watch the colorized version, but I prefer, like you said, the traditional one. Part of the reason is I learned when I watched a few years ago for the first time. What's it called? So the famous movie with the airplane scene at the end.
Airplane?
No, not Airplane. Crap! I can't believe I'm spacing on this. It's the most famous movie, the black and white movie with the guy, and he says it's going to be a beginning of a beautiful friendship. That movie.
Casablanca?
Holy crap, that was embarrassing. Anyway, when I watched...
What do you have to say? The most famous movie involving an airplane would probably be Airplane or Top Gun.
Casablanca is way more famous than Airplane. But
when you reference Airplane, people think...
The airplane scene... Anyway, whatever. Okay. So when I first watched that, I really understood that how, with the black and white era of filmmaking, they had to do lighting and everything in a very specific way to capture and to convey emotion and things like that. The cinematography wasn't just like, here's a nice shot. They had to do lighting in a different way. Yeah, lighting is important for how you do shots now, but like had to do it a very certain way to work with the shadows and everything, not just colors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I watched Casablanca, I was like, I completely appreciate the black and white era differently. Not that there's that much artisticness and that kind of stuff in this movie, like on the level of Casablanca, but that's why certain movies I appreciate, because when they filmed it and directed it, and the cinematographer, they worked with lighting in a specific way that once you airbrush colors on there, kind of detracts from that aspect of it. So I prefer the old one. Or the black and white, but that's what I watched. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I just think I feel the same way I feel about music, in that, like, I feel like you should watch it in the form it was designed for. So, because like you just said, and it makes sense. So when you have a black and white movie, you're going to film things in a different way than you would if it was color, because of shadows and things like that. I feel the same way about music. So like I have a friend who's really into records, and we both kind of agreed it's cool to listen to older music on record because it was originally designed for record. But new stuff, I just don't feel like the same way. So like if they made a movie today that was black and white and a color version, I think I'd probably watch the color version today, unless they specifically made it black and white for a reason. But like those old movies, since they made it originally in black and white, I want to see them in black and white.
Right. Here's a real fast example. You can see like the lighting, the brows, and everything. And this is, you know what I mean? This is just a quick shot, but it's just kind of blurred over. Like you can't see some of the detail. I mean, right here, there's a lot. I mean, it looks fine. It looks good, but it looks like a Christmas card as opposed to like a film shot. You know what I mean?
Right. Makes sense.
And you see like you see there's a lot of emotion that can be pulled out when you, I mean, this is like not the same frame, but like, you see what I'm saying? It's just, there's
I see what you're saying.
detail that's just like, you lose that a little bit, but again, it's not offensive. It's just much more preferred to watch.
Yeah. I think what I'm saying is like, if it's all we had and we were going to watch it, I'd be like, all right, fine. But I would prefer, if I had a choice, I would probably prefer the black and white.
Right. So, and that's what it was as soon as it came up with that, but it was the black and white version, thank goodness. But it had, you don't put a black and white tag on the Disney Plus. Sure. But so I mean, I would have watched it that way, but because I've seen enough times. Anyway, all right. Well, so there's the edition. Ashley watched it, and we're familiar, and that's why I pitched it to you guys. Are you guys good talking about this? Otherwise, I can find someone else that'd be more excited. If you guys are just like, yeah, I don't care. But you guys all wanted to. So before we go into talked about the movie a little bit, what are your earliest memories? Like, when did you guys fall in love with this film?
I've loved it since I saw it. And then my mom watched all the classic movies. So I'm pretty sure I was introduced to it really young. But yeah, it was always a movie that made me happy. I know.
You watch it every year?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely been a part of my regular Christmas watching every year.
I think I only get around to about 7. I mean, I'm not saying it because we do top 7 as a theme, but I mean, probably about 7 movies that I make sure I watch every year about that. I don't think I even get necessarily every year 10 full Christmas movies in because I'm so busy and running around. But of the ones I try to make sure I get, if it's at towards the end of the year, if I didn't watch this one, I'll be like, okay, I need to try and find some time to do it. But like Josh, I'm not like, oh no, I didn't watch it, and now Christmas is over, all is lost. This is just, it is in the top 7 of what I need to try to watch by the end of the year with White Christmas and Bishop's Wife. Both of those are classics that are in that era.
So you're saying Bishop's Wife is one that you don't have to watch every year?
No, I do. No,
you do watch every year.
That's in the top set. Like if I have the last week of Christmas, let's say I have one movie a night I can watch, and I have to plan my 7 most essential movies to watch during the Christmas season. Those 3 are for sure going to be in there: White Christmas, Bishop's Wife, and Miracle on 34th Street. And Miracle on 34th Street isn't like the top of that list. I don't know what it is. I'd have to think about that, but it's in the top. It's in that top 7. Doesn't mean it's like my favorite of all time, but it's like, it's part of the tradition because there's certain Christmas movies that are just like thematic for Christmas season stuff. And there's other Christmas movies that really pull out the emotion, the spirit of Christmas, like Die Hard, for example. And but there, you know what I mean? But this is one that really feels like it's like listening to the Messiah during Christmas time and then listening to it outside of Christmas. You can do it. It's entertainment, is wonderful and everything, but there's a specific spirit that pulls out that's seasonal, specifically seasonal.
I think I've said this before on this podcast. I don't watch Christmas movies outside of the time between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I may even go to New Year's, but that's it. So I won't watch, which is weird because like movies like Home Alone and even Christmas Vacation every once in a while, they'll like come on times that aren't Christmas, but I won't watch them. I'll be like, nope, not gonna do it. It's a Christmas movie. I only watch it for Christmas, but I'll watch Die Hard all year. So,
Die Hard all year. That's not exclusively Christmas, but it is a Christmas. But same thing with Nightmare Before Christmas. I can watch that any time of the year, but it is a Christmas movie more than it's a Halloween.
Actually, you just don't like watching. You just don't like that movie at all, do you?
I hate that movie.
Nightmare or Die Hard?
Nightmare.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
We need to talk about that sometime. But
I hate that movie.
Why do you hate it? Why do you hate it, Ashley?
Quickly.
It is completely disrespectful to Santa Claus. Nope.
Okay. Okay, we'll save this topic for another because we're talking about because I wanted to start a conversation because
you're gonna argue with me on that, Tim?
No, I'm not. No, calm down.
Really, Tim?
No,
really?
No, I was gonna say.
Can I just say that real quick before you go on? I just want to say that is the most lively I've seen Ashley on Saints on Cinema. Go ahead.
Animated about me challenging her, and we
challenging her on Nightmare Before Christmas. We definitely need to have this. Needs to be our next episode.
The 3 of us have had arguments about tarot cards and all kinds of stuff before. And she got most fired up about Nightmare Santa Claus treatment. I was going to say, do you think that's the worst version of Santa Claus because of that movie? Because I think there's one that's worse.
Wait, the worst version of Santa Claus?
I don't think that's what she's saying. I don't think it's the worst
That's not
version
what I'm
of Santa
saying.
Claus.
I'm saying they disrespected Santa Claus.
Oh, the characters in the show because they were trying to do their own Christmas, you mean? The story?
They kidnapped him and they were torturing him.
They didn't torture him.
What's wrong with them? No, they can all burn. I hate that movie.
It was Oogie Boogie and the three kids. It wasn't.
That
like
just means
well, he did come in bound and gag, and Jack did tell him to go take care of him. All right.
Well, this just means that Ashley can never go to Disneyland during Halloween season because
that is the worst. They ruined the Haunted Mansion.
Is that what they do? I haven't been.
Yeah, they do. They turn it all Nightmare Before Christmas during Halloween time.
Yeah,
I think. Anyway, do they keep it that way during Christmas too? I think they do.
Keep it that way all the way through January.
Wow.
Okay. Well, we'll have some grievances expressed more another time, but it's fine. I'm not going to defend it. I don't care. I mean, not because I don't care about your opinion, Ashley. I'm just saying, like, I don't give a crap about it. I don't like that Santa Claus. I don't like Oogie Boogie. I don't like any of those scenes. I like everything around those three characters. But there is a worse Santa Claus. So I'll just say that. Anyway, and you're not complaining about Santa Claus. All right, Miracle on 34th Street. I watched it as a kid, but it was never like my mom sat me down and forced me to watch it. I almost did it with my kids tonight, but I chose not to. I didn't want to make them watch it, but I was always around, like kind of like probably your parents, Ashley. I was around while it was on, and I just kind of picked it up through osmosis. Then I became invested, and I sat and watched through it at some point. I probably watched it when I was like in 6th, 7th grade. It was probably the first time I watched it all the way through for myself. That's when I discovered White Christmas too. I was watching movies late at night, and then it came on at like 1 a.m, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna go to bed after this scene, and then I was just nope, I gotta know what happens next. What happens next? And I was hooked the whole time. But I always love this movie. What about you, Josh? When did you discover it, or how?
Well, okay. So the thing is I don't think as a kid, I don't remember really watching this movie that much.
Mm-hmm.
I actually remember more so being turned on to it because I think it was Home Alone, where he's walking by the TV and there's that scene where the Santa Claus is drunk. And he's watching it on the TV and he does that. I think it was Home Alone. It's one of the movies I was like, what movie is that from? And then I started watching it from there. And again, this is not a movie to me. Like I'm not necessarily in love with it. I mean, I really enjoy it, but it's not a movie that I want to watch every single year for Christmas. I have a lot of them. I do. This is just not one of them.
This is one of mine. This is one of my favorites.
Me too.
I love it.
I'll tell you 3 reasons why. Well, 4. What's her name? Not Marilyn. The mom. Marina. Yeah, I love her. I love her in Parent Trap. I love her in McClintock, and she's always this feisty, businessy, tough gal. I love
beautiful.
Her. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Classic Hollywood story. Just gorgeous woman, absolutely gorgeous. Especially in never mind. What do you want to get them? These other movies, but Parent Trap. The kitchen scene where she seduces him just by being like in an apron, like with bare feet and stuff. I'm like, that is so awesome. Anyway, Natalie Wood. I always had a huge crush on Natalie Wood, and I was like older and discovered West Side Story before I found out that she was the little girl in Miracle. I was like, what? So I rewatched. I was like, holy crap, that's her. She's just so good. And some of the stuff I read about her in this magazine talked about how she was like, has like a photographic memory, and she was picked up. This is like her 3rd movie, and like she was just knocking. They called her one take Natalie because she had this reputation, and she was like calling everyone else out, and they're messing up their lines and stuff because she like had it all down. Fantastic. And the court scenes, Mr. Gailey, I love that whole spirit of Christmas thing. The whole like he has this imagination and he's just childlike and but he's also like professional and intelligent and smart and educated. And it's just like he's a well balanced. I was like, that's the kind of guy I want to be like. And I never became that guy, but I was like, he's so cool because he's in touch with that inner spirit, that childlike spirit, and that's what he tries to share with the family the whole time. The 2 characters, right? And Santa Claus, I think this is one of the best Santa Clauses. I really do. We're gonna do we talked about doing another discussion about what are the top 7 Santa Claus in film, so we don't need to get that discussion now. But he's really good, not because he's dressed and acts and looks like Santa Claus, but the little things he does throughout the movie that we'll talk about in a second. the specifics, the way he connects with people, and the way he's inspiring to people, and the way people kind of read that he is Santa Claus subtly. It's really well done. Those are the main things that I like about it. And Josh, the court scenes, how can you not appreciate this as an attorney? All the awesome stuff in the trial or the
I do like the movie. I'm not saying I don't. It's just not one that I'm like, and also while we were on the subject, because you said something earlier, I want to go back to the crappy Miracle on 34th Street. There was a newer one that was actually, it wasn't that bad, right? It was kind of like a Hallmark style Miracle on 34th Street, right?
No.
Are you talking about the one with Mara, whatever her name is, from the Mrs. Doubtfire and stuff? That's the only one I'm aware of.
No, that one was horrible.
Yeah, the one with the girl who was from the one that has the girl from Matilda.
Yeah, no, that's horrible. That they no, and the reason why it's horrible is subtle, and probably because you're I feel that people who aren't totally honed in on this original could easily look at and watch that one and not grasp the
why it's special, why it's a special story.
No. Why this new one isn't good, and the reason is because the original, right, with Maureen O'Hara and Natalie Wood, the storyline is very similar between both of them, but the issue is that in this original, it promotes having faith and magic and believing in things, right? Where this new one, they allowed it to make those types of behaviors appear as insanity. And it's really subtle, but it's there.
Yeah. Yes.
But doesn't it in the end, the same thing happen? So, I mean, it's like the people who did have faith, it works out.
No, because they still kind of like lean it to, if you watch it again with that mindset, you're going to see it, because like once you like have the awareness of it, you see it totally. But like, even in the end, in the new one, it's like, okay, this is a crazy individual and he did this stuff and it's just creepy, right? Like it's just different. There's just that subtle thing there.
It doesn't have the subtext of them, these individuals learning to believe in Santa Claus because of things, more because of their interactions and experience with him, not that there was magic stuff happening. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's okay. So it's more about like kind of like a value system, right? And in the original, they're kind of like, Bailey, like he's talking about that. You have to have values. It's the little things in life. It's the little things that make all the big things worth it, and all this kind of stuff. So it's all honed in on having these core values and allowing that to have like an impact in like your faith and humanity and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Where and that's important. And I'm trying to find, so one of my favorite books, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, there's actually a page in there, and I was trying to see if I could find the quote to like bring it, because it's vital to like what I'm trying to say right here. But then this new one, it's all about like they're proving that Santa Claus is insane. And it's really just kind of like a pity vote of why he is let go, basically, right? Like, oh, we can't do that. Like the storyline's the same, but the context is different. And that's what's like really important between the two of them, because it's not about core values. It's not about beliefs. It's not about that. So I'm going to paraphrase, and it's not going to be the same, but like A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, right? It's a book that was written around World War II, right? And in there's a mother whose daughter got pregnant, and the mother is giving the daughter advice for how to be a mom. And she's giving these things like have a tin can in your closet, put money in it when you can, and have a savings, have this. And like one of the things that she says, she's like, you have to allow your children to believe in Santa Claus. And like the daughter's like, but why? And she's like, because magic is worth believing in. It gives and the mom is giving like this like wonderful advice. It's like one of my favorite. That whole scene in that book is like amazing, but it's pivotal and it's important because if you don't allow people to believe in magic, if you don't allow that kind of thing, what it can do to you as a person is it inhibits you on so many levels as you get
older. I want to read. This is the scene from Miracle. This is where after Mr. Gailey takes Susie to see Santa Claus without telling the mom, and then she comes in and reprimands him quietly. She says, "Go ahead, you stay here for a minute while I talk to Mr. Gailey," and then she lets him have it. And this is when the Dutch girl comes in. And I want to talk about that scene in a second. But Mr. Gailey, he says, he's like, I shouldn't have brought her in, and she goes, well, what is she going to think? Who's she going to believe? Or by filling them with, because she's like, I'm telling her one way, and then you do this. And she's like, he says, by filling them full of fairy tales, they grow up considering life a fantasy instead of a reality. And they keep waiting for Prince Charming to come along. And when he does, he turns out to be, and then she cuts herself off. And then he's like, I thought we were talking about Susie, and that's the revelation right there. And that's what I like about the movie is how it doesn't stop and go deep into her backstory. You don't see flashbacks. She doesn't have conversations about her ex-husband or anything. Little lines like that. There's just like one or two in the whole movie. You get the vision of why she's so like hard-hearted this way, that she's just so conservative and so unimaginative, and she doesn't have that kind of childlike fun with the imagination for her kids. And that's why Mr. Gailey is a completely opposite and contrary match for her. The other thing that was interesting then that was talking about this in this magazine is how progressive she was that no one really appreciates. And maybe this is another point, Ashley, in the comparison with the new one. The new one is so modern that you wouldn't even see that dynamic that back then from her job, the way she's taking control and charge at the parade in the beginning. She dresses really nice. She has this high level where she rubs shoulders with the executives and Mr. Macy. She has this big open apartment right there on the parade route and everything, where that's a very expensive apartment. And her office is all, big and open compared to Mr. Gailey's that you see later. It's all tight and restrictive. But she's like the power or whatever, not girl power, but it's like she's the successful businesswoman. And back in the 40s when this came out, that's kind of crazy to think about. That's like a big deal. And when you see Mr. Gailey, when they're preparing dinner and stuff like that, he's wearing an apron, he's helping cook and all that in the 40s. That's like just a big, huge flip. You watch that movie, if you, like you said, audiences watching the new movie wouldn't even maybe get that. And because it's not going to be visual, I imagine. I've never seen it, but I can't imagine it'd be that visual to see that. And I think that's amazing. You only get that with Maureen O'Hara. Whew. She's awesome.
Right.
I like that. But
I just want to throw out there that I didn't care that much.
I care.
I said I just want to make sure I didn't care that much about the new one. I didn't realize it was that bad. So I was because I remember because that came out in the 90s, right? And so I remember it came out and we were watching it and I just was like
95.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I was just kind of like, man, it's fine.
It's like watching the Annie they made in the 90s, and then it's like, and I'm not saying because I'm the same guy that wants them to remake Princess Bride. I'm not worried about. I don't think remakes with movies are untouchable. I'm just saying that you got to have something new to do with it, and it didn't look.
If they want to remake very rarely a remakes anything worth their salt, but no. So anyway, it's the right opinion, but yeah. So Miracle on 34th Street. For me, it's a fun movie. I like watching it. I love the message. I love all the trial stuff. I love how there's restored faith in humanity. But I think if I were to choose, I'd probably watch A Wonderful Life more than Miracle on 34th Street. I know how you feel.
I struggle with that movie just because I do. I mean, I like it, but so I would be hard when I watched as a kid. That scene where his boss boxes his ears and he starts bleeding. I lost it. I lost it, and I still lose it to this day. I can't stand that scene. I'll watch that movie if I'm allowed to fast forward that scene. I can't.
So you like the movie? It's just that scene gets to you.
Yeah, it gets me, and I can't. I have to be able to fast forward that scene. As an adult, because I was traumatized as a kid. I can't do it.
So here's the thing. The fact that a scene can make you feel that way shows the power, in my opinion.
Well, I hear you, and I agree. But I also have never bawled more in a movie than the original Fly when the cat disappeared into space. So I'm just saying, it's like I get sensitive to like particular things for like reasons that associate to like my life, and like that's just one of them. Like
one day we should do top 7 reactions to film that we've had in a theater, because when I was 4 or 5, I had a serious reaction to Neverending Story in the theater. And it was actually really interesting. Yeah. I was like, it was the very first scene. Like the very first scene where
the egg is falling.
No. The very first scene where they're in Eternia. Is that what they call it? Eternia? I can't remember what they call it. I think it was Eternia. But they're in the fantasy land, and the rock biter is riding his bike through the forest. And for whatever reason, that rock biter scared the crap out of me when I was 4 or 5 years old. I screamed and ran out of the theater.
What movie was this?
Neverending Story.
So you're talking about just any reaction, not just sad reactions. I thought.
Yeah, I'm just talking about like reactions. Like I've had lots of different reactions to movies in theaters that were like horror films, movies that made me cry for like random reasons. It's so interesting how also it depends on where you are in your life when you see a movie, how certain things, like if it's the first time you're seeing it, will really like get you, whereas at other parts it probably wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like it's funny how like if you are in a certain frame of mind and you go into a movie and you're sitting there and watching it and something hits you the right way based on what you're dealing with that day or that week or that month, how it could have like a profound effect on you.
Right.
So
and that's what I love about movies. I watched tonight Ernest Saves Christmas with my kids. I let them watch that. I mean, not that they wanted to. I made them watch a movie, and I chose that one over Miracle. What did you just say?
That's a good movie. Ernest Saves Christmas. Okay. I love the Ernest movies, but it's funny. I gotta say, it's funny that you knew we were doing Miracle on 34th Street tonight, and you were choosing between Miracle on 34th Street and the one you chose instead was Ernest.
To make them watch it, because I knew I'd have time after we finished it that I could watch Miracle on 34th Street, and I'll let them do whatever until they got picked up. Anyway, what I was gonna say is priorities, Josh. I got Ernest out of the way. The scene where she comes out of the train station when she has the bag and she feels guilty, she yells at the brother for telling the sister there's no Santa Claus, and then all is lost. Ernest has a sled and he can't figure it out. The guy, or what's his name, the new Santa Claus is stuck in traffic. The reindeer are going crazy. The elves are discouraged, and Santa Claus is sitting there with no bag, no sled, no Santa Claus, and it's all is lost. And then she comes around the corner and just in tears and says, like, I've been thinking about you and thinking about Ernest. And I hit my son. I was like, this is where I cry. And then he looks at me like I'm an idiot. And then she talks about, and I think about all these things, and I've been figuring stuff out. I'm gonna go home. I even called my mom, and she gets emotional. And then she hugs him, and she's so sorry, and she hugs Santa Claus. And I'm like, literally tears down my face. And Asher's like, you didn't lie, Dad. I'm like, no, I know. I told you, I cry at this movie. And it's freaking.
You cry at Ernest Saves Christmas?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And the part.
He cries in Alf. I mean, we
that's
can't
true.
That's because that's the most emotional. Okay. Anyway, I want to talk about this scene at the mall. Because this is the last comparison. This is the only other thought I have about the remake, because I watched it because I was curious how they did it in this one. The Dutch girl. When Susie's sitting there watching Santa Claus, and this is one of those magical moments where that's the thing. People around him have these little one-on-one moments or what one of moments. It's not necessarily like it's a magical, miraculous thing. He could just speak Dutch because the mom the whole time is explaining to Susie that's just a coincidence. Yeah, a lot of people have beards. I speak French, but that doesn't make me Joan of Arc. It's like that. But when the Dutch girl comes up, the lady that she's taking care of her, whatever her situation is, she says. She comes in. He's like, "Hello, little girl. What's your name?" He's like, she goes, "She won't understand you because she only speaks Dutch or she doesn't speak English." And she said, "But she saw you at the parade. She really wanted to meet you because she believed that you're really Santa Claus." What's that? Sinterklaas. Yeah. And so Chris he's like, oh, he considers for a second and he lets the lady keep talking just for a second. Then he cuts her off. He's like, oh, and he starts talking to her. And then the girl's face just lights up because she knew it was really him. And then she gets on his lap and she just puts her arm and he just warms her or just grabs her so close. And Santa Claus is, I don't know what the rules are in today's world, but like, it's just so touching to see that.
They wear a plastic mask guarding their face. Now.
But I Googled, I wanted to know what the conversation was. And this is what she says. She says, "Oh, you are Sinterklaas." He said, "Well, yes, of course." And she goes, I knew that you would understand. And he goes, "Well, of course. So tell me what you'd like." And she says, "Nothing. I already have everything. I just want to stay with this lovely lady."
Yeah.
And then she turns and looks at her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes that scene like so much more heartwarming. And then he said, "Would you like to sing for me?" And then they sing the Sinterklaas. Yeah. Which apparently means Saint Nicholas, you little rascal, put something on my little shoe, put something on my little boot. So that's what the lyrics I pulled up. But anyway, what I love that because it's just a moment that he has with this girl and Susie is just watching it and she's just like kind of confounded. Like, how did that just happen? Mm-hmm. In the new version, I just out of curiosity, I watched that one scene and it's a deaf girl instead of a Dutch girl.
Right.
And the deaf girl is, it's kind of the same scene, but like while he's signing to her, like, "You're very beautiful. You have a beautiful name," or whatever. Mm-hmm. How's that, Ash? Is that good?
Yeah. Quite offensive, really, but that's fine.
But then at the end of it, Santa Claus looks at Susie and winks at her. And I'm like, no, that just crippled the integrity of that scene. That scene was a special moment for that other girl, completely independent of trying to impress or prove anything to Susie. I don't like the idea of Matilda sitting there watching Santa Claus and he's like, no, she's watching. So he's like trying to perform for her. And I know that's not entirely what they're trying to convey, but that wink just completely sells that story to me, and I don't like that.
Well, but it's like also like look at the time period of like the original and what was happening over there at that time. You know what I mean? Like that also helps. Like it makes that scene even powerful.
It's about people. That movie's about people.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into the whole script. I want to talk about two scenes about the dialogue with what Josh was talking about earlier. It was about this imagination where what you were saying too, Ashley, when he first talks to the mom, this is when after they're talking about the parade, how she's like, oh, that the baseball player looks like a giant. And Susie's like, oh, it was a clown last year. They just changed his hand and repainted it. And he's like, you're like dumping all over the parade. You're like ruining it. But he doesn't say that. But he said, you don't know, he looks like a giant to me. And then she doesn't believe in giants. And then so he talks to the mom and he said, I see she doesn't believe in Santa Claus either. No Santa Claus, no fairy tales, no fantasies of any kind. Is that it? And the Doris says, that's right. We should be realistic and completely truthful with our children and not have them growing up believing in a lot of legends and myths like Santa Claus, for example. Now, we don't learn till later on about the thing with the ex-husband or whatever, the father, the man that she thought was Prince Charming and just took off or whatever. But that right there is a big parenting thing, and that's what he tries to counter the whole time. Santa Claus' reason for moving in with Mr. Gailey is, and he says that, I'm going to work on Susie and you work on the mother. Mm-hmm. And he told the mother right to her face, as he's worried about the world and the transitions of the world and everything being all commercial and everything, like Alfred, the janitor, says. He goes, he says right to her, you are going to be the case study. If I can convince you, then there might be hope for humanity. And that's why the end of this movie is so important. The climax isn't just like, oh, they found a house that was for sale. That was just something that happened. He wrote down directions. They went to the house, right? But what happened was he helped them believe in Santa Claus, and that changed their way of looking at the world. Having imagination, having joy, having fun, you know.
I actually just messaged you guys that from the book, and I'll put it in the comments of this video so people can read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Want. The whole like 2 people, just kidding. But like
you guys are such downers. You guys are just like,
no, but like
Susie and
you know what? This place has more subscribers than Edlow podcast.
Oh, there
it has been around for 3 or 4 years, but still.
But so that's the thing. It's like, so I mean, it's a long thing. There's like, I guess I don't need to read it, but the reason why it's important for kids to believe in Santa Claus, like how, you know, you're like, she's talking about like this, you know, oh, there it is. But yeah, so it was, you know, mother, I know there's no ghosts or fairies. I would be teaching the child foolish lies. She's like, you do not know whether there's not ghosts on earth or angels in heaven. I know there's no Santa Claus, yet you must teach a child that these things are so. Why? When I in myself don't believe? Because the child must have a valuable things which is called imagination. The child must have a secret world in which I think this is a horrible depiction, but live things never were. It's necessary that she believe. She must start out by believing in things not of this world. Then when the world becomes too ugly to live in, the child can reach back and live in her imagination. I myself, even in this day and at my age, have great need of recalling the miraculous lives of the saints and the great miracles that have come to pass on earth. Only by having these things in my mind can I live beyond what I have to live for. And it continues on like about how like learning the truth is also good and other things. But like that's why it's like it's so important. And like when parents like have I will fight this with people. They're just like, no, I'm not going to ever lie to my child. And it's like, you're not lying to your child. You're giving them an opportunity. You know, like there's so much that comes from it. Passionate about this. Santa Claus. Passionate about Santa Claus. Yeah.
Just curious about you guys. And you guys are out in California. I mean, I think honestly, the Mormon culture, or, you know, in Utah or whatever, I think we're open to this. I don't think we don't have like a lot of conservative views as far as that stuff goes. Like we believe in, you know, they're superstitious, and I don't mean like, you know, like ignorant, but I just mean like we have fun. We celebrate Christmas and Santa Claus. Santa Claus used to come to our ward parties, you know, in the church, like officially. They would plan that stuff. We're not opposed to that. Santa Claus gets discussed in general conference, or well, more for in the first presidency devotionals and stuff at Christmas time to the general members of the church. Like we're not opposed to having fun and suspending disbelief. Is that the right phrase? I don't know if that applies here, but you know, encouraging imagination and having fun with these traditions. Is that the culture in California? I'm just curious.
I mean, my experience has been that all my kids' friends believe in Santa. I mean, it depends. Like, I mean, obviously as they get older, the belief kind of dissipates, right? And my kids, so like my 2 youngest are still in this, you know, Santa Claus space. But like my younger daughter is doing Elf on a Shelf for my son.
I saw that picture.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, but she's doing it. Her and her older sister are doing it for my son. Whereas a year ago, 2 years ago, like my older daughter would be doing it for both of them. So we kind of have I've kind of developed a thing this is completely random, but I developed a thing for my son when he started losing, you know, faith in these fictional characters we all believe in. It actually started with the Tooth Fairy, but graduated to Santa Claus, where one day he came in and he had a tooth that he lost, and he didn't tell anybody, and he hid it under his pillow to test the Tooth Fairy. And then when no money came, he came back in and he was like, so Tooth Fairy ain't real, right? And so I just, on the whim, I pulled him aside and I go, all right, here's the deal, right? Every house has its own Tooth Fairy. and I am the tooth fairy for you. And so now that you are in on this, I am now retired, and now you are the tooth fairy. So congratulations. You now, when you're, you're at the time he only had, I think, one sister that was losing teeth. So I was like, when your sister starts losing teeth, you're the one that's got to go in there and do it. And so he assumed the tooth fairy role. And then as he grew up in Santa, he's same thing. So now he helps with the wrapping of presents and things like that, and filling stockings and doing that stuff. And my older daughter's kind of, this year she'll probably be in on it too, whereas before she didn't do that stuff. I think she fakes still believing in Santa just so she doesn't have to stay up and wrap, but
well,
she's that way.
Before Ashley responds, I was going to say with that, what you just described with the tooth fairy example, Jason Alexander from Seinfeld, who played George, he had a book, that a children's illustrated book that came out. I got it like a decade ago. I don't know how long ago. When my kids were a little bit younger, and he talked about that and told the story. He's like, what, when his children asked him, is the tooth fairy real or whatever, and then they started not believing or whatever the narrative is in the story, and the tradition in the book, or what the general message of the book is, that he said, okay, let's look at it. Even if there's no actual fairy that comes into your room and replaces money for the tooth or whatever, if that actually isn't the exchange, if it's parents that were to do that, that doesn't identify or doesn't prove that there's not a tooth fairy. There's not some magic that's inspiring parents to continue with the tradition. That's causing the fulfillment of that superstition or that belief, right? Is it any different that what we believe as Christians, that like or any religion that believes in God, with someone being inspired by the Spirit or a spirit to do something good for someone else, and that person they receive that as a miracle or an answer to a prayer? That doesn't mean just because a person did the act doesn't mean that it wasn't a God-inspired thing. Same concept, and I love that. It's a great book, but that's why I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And I think the same thing could be looked at from Santa Claus. I still believe in Santa Claus. I believe in the magic. I still believe in the lore. I still believe in the practices and the traditions around it. And I believe in the spirit that it brings into humanity, even if it were parents just buying presents and wrapping them for kids or whatever. That doesn't change that there is a spirit of Christmas that I believe in, that does encompass people at this time of year to be more compassionate, more considerate, more generous. And I think that translates into our family behaviors and going down to gift exchanges. Whether there's a chimney or someone coming down to put presents under a tree, that's irrelevant. And that illustration by Jason Alexander, I thought was a really wonderfully put way of doing it, even though I didn't do it justice tonight. But yeah, I think that's really cool. What about you, Ashley? Do you have any thoughts on?
No, I still very firmly believe in Santa Claus. And like, so when I was younger, I want to say it was like 3 or 4, we were all having, it was me and my mom, and we're having Christmas at my grandma's house. And I remember walking out to get some water or something. Like I woke up and went got water, and I saw my aunt. The front door was open, and I was curious, and so I looked out the window, and my aunt was pulling things out of the back of her truck. And I didn't think anything of it until the next day when I saw that the things that I saw her pull out were marked from Santa Claus. So I asked my mom about it, and so we had a conversation, and she told me, she's like, it's not. She's like, there's not necessarily a man who comes down the chimney. She's like, however, Santa Claus does visit every single house on Christmas Eve and leave a magic if people are willing to believe in it.
Yeah.
And, and that's the thing. And it's, what's more fun, to believe in something like that, to believe that there's magic in the world, or to not, and
right.
It's just kind of like I think it's just a beautiful thing. And I don't think it means people are dumb to believe in that kind of stuff. It's important. Oh yeah, I want that book.
That's the book. It's super cute. It's emotional too. It's like it's on like Puff the Magic Dragon level. The book, not the song, but the book is the song. But anyway, it's really good. Highly recommend it. Anyway, Well, we haven't talked a lot about the movie. I just want to talk a couple of things before we talk, because we've been talking for over an hour now. But whatever. Josh and I are long-winded and are used to that. But you guys are falling asleep, and I'm not falling asleep. I mean, you guys are tired because it's late for you guys. I work graveyard, so this is like nothing for me. Let's just talk about a couple of scenes, couple of characters. How do you guys love the introduction of Santa Claus in the Miracle on 34th Street? Is the parade, Macy's Day Parade. And I gotta say, I always knew there was a Thanksgiving Day Parade, but I didn't really know what Macy's was. And when I first started watching the parade, as like 11 or whatever, I would go upstairs and watch it I'd turn on the TV on Thanksgiving morning. Not because I was excited about the parade, but I was like, oh wait, there's a parade. I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. The first year I did that, I watched the parade, and then the commercials, I would flip to another channel, and that's when I would see the performances, the Broadway plays, and like the dance numbers, the marching band stops, and all the dancers and everything, and even the floats would stop and do like a routine in front of the Macy's store, whatever, it's a Macy's store, right? I don't know if there's more than just that, but there was like the channel that was officially sponsored by Macy's, and then there was the channel I was watching by accident, which was like down the block, and they don't get the performances. Oh. They're just observing what's coming around the corner and talking. I was like, oh, I missed the parade from the right station. So now I learned that there is the official channel that does the Macy's. But because of this show, I, as a kid, was like, I'm a fan of Macy's, and we didn't have Macy's in Utah until like a decade ago. So I was like, I didn't know it was a real store. I knew it was a store, but I didn't know it was like a chain until I was older. I was actually married and went to DC on a trip to visit my in-laws.
Wait, there's not a Macy's at like a mall and
now there are, but there are now, they're around, but they weren't until like 10 years ago.
Wait.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That big mall in Salt Lake didn't have a Macy's in it?
Nope. There were none.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy? So because I didn't know it was a real store.
ZCMI was the clothing store that was similar to Macy's, but it was church owned.
Well, there was a lot of malls that had big J.C. Penney's and Sears and stuff. There was a lot of department stores.
That's so funny because Macy's is like, in my view, maybe some people would disagree, but like Macy's was like a step above J.C. Penney's and Gottschalk's, and that's really old.
Yeah.
Gottschalk's was an older designer store that's no longer around, but like it was like Macy's and Nordstrom's were like the big ones around here in Sacramento.
Nordstrom's
those were the fancy ones before all the trendy American Eagle and Abercrombie and Fitch and Banana Republic.
Well, but those are stores versus a big department store. That's like a clothing store or whatever. But like the big
that's what I'm saying. Like an anchor store for the mall was always Macy's in every mall. I mean, when I was growing up here, there were 3 malls. The Galleria that was built as the 4th and basically crushed everybody else. But it was Sunrise Mall, Arden Fair Mall, and the Country Club Plaza. And there was like this Florin Mall that, you'd have to wear a bulletproof vest to go to. But but they all had Macy's in them. You know what I mean? It was like Macy's and JCPenney's were the anchors, and then, or Sears. Sears was an anchor too. And then, now, 3 of those malls there's 2 left. But anyway, I'm surprised wasn't around in Utah.
Yeah, when I was a kid living in Hawaii, the mall there had Sears and JCPenney's. And then I moved to California. I never saw Macy's until I went out to Washington, D.C. And now they're here. But it's a great store. And I was always like, I would shop there just because of this movie. I think this movie was crazy marketing, amazing marketing for the
it's like the Wizard. It's like the Wizard for Nintendo selling all those Power Gloves.
Okay,
still the worst. The 2 best things that ever came, the 2 craziest things, the best and worst thing about Nintendo came out: Mario Brothers 3 and Power Glove, and they both came out of that movie.
All right, let's not compare crappy movies to this awesome classic.
No, but I'm just saying, I just had to get that out there because I'm still bent about the Power Glove that year for Christmas when I was like 10.
Yeah, so you're the only person that's ever spoken favorably about the Power Glove. But anyway,
I'm not speaking favorably. It's terrible.
Oh, I thought you were saying you those 2 awesome things: Mario Brothers 3 and the Power Glove.
No, Power Glove was going to be awesome, and it was garbage.
Yes.
Speaking of which, we got a review just before you go on to Miracle on 34th Street, because I mean we're not even talking about it really. Is that that movie 8-Bit Christmas? We got to review 8-Bit Christmas. That is fantastic movie.
8-Bit
I've never seen it.
8-Bit Christmas. I think it's on HBO Max.
Okay.
And it's got what's his name? Doogie Howser.
Neil Patrick Harris.
Neil Patrick Harris is in it, and it's basically a Christmas story, but it's set in the 80s, and he wants a Nintendo.
Oh, I saw previews for that last year. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched it for the first time this year,
okay.
And it's fantastic.
All right, we'll watch it. Miracle on 34th Street. So the parade scene. We're not going through the whole movie. Just this whole scene though is really good setup. He's walking to the parade. He checks out the department or the guys setting up the reindeer, and he's looking at his weird cardboard reindeer with his wooden these figurines, and he's like talking about how he got them all backwards, and you're like, this guy's, he's Santa Claus. He gets there, he's offended by the drunk Santa Claus that you mentioned, Josh, that they show that's a funny scene in whatever other movie. And I remember, and I can't think of what it is, but I know what you're talking about. And then he shows him how to do the whip, and then he gets out, and he's like, your Santa Claus is intoxicated. They let him do it. He gets to work the next day because they hire him on as Santa Claus, and he has his own costume. And then he meets Alfred, the janitor, and he's given a list of toys to try and push on people. He's like, I'm not going to push these presents on people that the things that they don't want. And he just brings out all this Santa Claus, not magic, but just his personality. And again, this is why I think he's one of the best Santa Claus, because he it seems so natural. He's not like, I'm here and I'm magical and I just appear and have this little message and I disappear because I'm like magic and I have like so much important work to do. And he's not just some, like Scott Calvin from the Santa Claus movies. Like that's a fun characterization of the Santa Claus with what they're trying to do. But there are very few classic, like magical Santa Claus that really work organically or naturally. This is one of the best because he's just a guy going around with this personality and these fixations and this interest and the specializations, including speaking multiple languages, that just fit who Santa Claus would be. But he doesn't do anything in the movie. He doesn't do anything miraculous. Nothing. And compare that with Ernest Saved Christmas. All this miraculous stuff that happens, but like, it's just, it's fun to watch that because that's what I like about a good Santa Claus is that it's natural and you're just like, maybe he's real, maybe he's not. Because like you were saying, Josh, like I think you were saying that whether or not you believe in something, is what you were saying earlier about belief, like if it's true or not, but it's the message of the movie is us being better people, but our being better people is what generates that Christmas spirit that I was talking about earlier. I like this Santa Claus because he really sells it. It's all just his personality and who he is. And as the audience, you're like, oh, that's awesome. And he meets Alfred and he's like, he hasn't done anything to convince Alfred, but Alfred's talking about how he plays Santa Claus at the Y, and Santa Claus is like, or he's like, do you enjoy playing me? And he's like, oh yeah. And he talks about how he likes watching kids beam when they open their presents and everything. It just makes him feel good. He doesn't even be like, well, I like playing Santa Claus. He's just naturally, it's automatically and instinctively, I play you at the Y. I just think that stuff is awesome. And like he just goes by Chris the whole movie. And then she's like, give me his employee card. And then she gets the card. It's like next of kin is the 8 reindeer. What's his age? Older than my, what is it? As old as my tongue, but a little older than my teeth.
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned the law scenes, and I think part of the reason why I know, I don't necessarily get into it is because I don't know the guy defending him. I'm more like a Will Gardner lawyer, from like The Good Wife, where it's just like I feel like I'm more in tune with like hard, difficult. They're just so chummy and nice. You know what I mean? Like
that's the charm of the era.
I don't like the lawyer. These lawyers are not real lawyers. You know what I mean? Like lawyers are mean, angry people. Okay. Well, they are not nice.
That was brilliant about Mr. Gailey because what is he? I guess the guy representing the city. I don't really understand the court stuff. Like like the difference between a trial and a hearing or anything, because he makes it very clear you don't have to answer any questions you don't want to. He's like, oh, I'm happy to. But the first witness they bring up is the other attorney's son to come up and testify that there's a Santa Claus, and he says, and who told you there's a Santa Claus? My daddy.
Yeah.
So like,
that would never that would never get in. That would never get in.
Oh, you're so cynical.
Hearsay.
It doesn't. No, but it's okay. But it's the character of the defendant that the attorney trying to say there is no Santa Claus told his son there is Santa Claus. Doesn't the integrity of the lawyer count in the trial? Like, wasn't that a strategic move? What do you mean? No.
First of all, no, because what the lawyers say in trial are not evidence. It's not evidence.
No, and it's not a jury in the situation. It's not a trial. It's a hearing, whatever that means. But still,
the point. The judge still hears evidence. It's got to be relevant. First of all, anything that the lawyer said outside of court is a hearsay statement, so you can't use it. Okay, that's number one. And number two, also, anything an attorney says is not evidence. So just because an attorney takes a certain position in court, and also, by the way, I don't think that the attorney was saying that there was no Santa Claus. I think what he was saying was that guy's not Santa Claus.
Right. So, well, they changed that in the first part of the scene. He says you have to. You can't say he's not Santa Claus. You'd have to prove that there is no Santa Claus. And then that's when Mr. Gailey makes the announcements. I intend to prove that he is Santa Claus. And then that's when the media goes crazy and they start taking pictures and everything. But like the jury or the job is to convince the judge whether or not to have him committed, right?
Yeah. So probably.
Well, and then there's the other aspects of the trial that the judge is like going to run for office, and his campaign manager's like, go ahead, tell him make a ruling that there's no Santa Claus, and this see how that happens in the elections. And then he calls it Mr. Macy. He's like, is there a Santa Claus? Do you believe this man to be Santa Claus? And he's sitting there thinking about the headlines of like, oh, Mr. Macy shoots down Santa Claus or whatever. And he's like, no. And he's like, no, I do. And he thinks about the magical things that he did. He's like, I do believe this is Santa Claus, which is, a gimmick for his company. But like all the stuff that happens in the trial is good until he has to prove that he is Santa Claus, and he can't do it because, like you said, it's all hearsay until the post office argument comes in. And now he comes in with the 3 letters, which is brilliant. He has the 3 letters that the post office, this is what's awesome. It was the letter. They had that scene where she's like, Susie's like, is he sad? And the mom, what's her name? Debbie, whatever. She's like, yeah, Doris. I think he is a little sad. She's like, I'm going to write him a letter to cheer him up. And so she writes it to Santa Claus, delivers it to the courthouse. And then they're like, oh, here's a letter for you. And then the post office is like, hey, let's send all this crap over there to get rid of it. And then they send it all over. And those 3 letters are just the parts of evidence. But then he pulls out the statistics on how well the post office is doing, how much revenue they make and everything. And then the attorney is like, well, I'm sure we're all glad to know that the post office is doing so well, but how is this relevant? And then he demands all of the evidence, and then they bring in all the bags and they dump it on there. And then he says, I'm not going to challenge the verdict or the decision of the post office that this man is Santa Claus. And it all happened, Josh. Not that I'm trying to convince you, but it all happened, Ashley, from this little girl doing an act of kindness to a man a regular person that she doesn't believe is Santa Claus, that she just wanted to cheer up. And that unlocked all the lessons. The small and simple things brought great things to pass, as we learn from the scriptures. That's what I love about it. And the other part of it is that she's still not convinced. And now Doris is convinced, well, more obligated because of the trial or the hearing, that she has to say or support him as Santa Claus. But she believes him because at the very bottom of the letter, she's like, and I believe in you too. And I was like, oh my gosh, it makes me so emotional. And so she sends the letter, and the guy and Mr. Gailey comes in. He's like, I got nothing. We're not going to win this trial. He's like, I don't care. And he like holds up the letter. He's like, this is more rewarding than anything else or whatever the line is. And then the witnesses from the governor or whatever that wasn't going to fall through or that was falling through. But that's the magic. That's all he cared about, was convincing Susie and Doris, and it worked. And then it unlocked the opportunity for everyone else to have a magical Christmas. Josh, you don't see the vision.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, though.
It's a good movie. I like it.
I know you do. I'm just giving you a hard time.
It's not my. It's not in my. It's not in my top. But it's no Christmas Story. It's no Christmas Vacation. It's no Home Alone. You know?
Well, I have thoughts about that, but I don't want to get into it right now. But that's the thing is, I think once it gets to the trial stuff, I think that's when the movie gets fun, because it's kind of like cute and heartwarming, like Mr. Gailey and the conversations, the bubble gum exploding, teaching Susie how to have an imagination. The dialogue is interesting for these values that we were talking about earlier. And then the parenting theories and philosophies. And then it goes into the dark point of the movie where he gets convicted or committed. And the doctor from what's his name? The other doctor that knows who he is comes in. He's like defending him, saying he's not going to be harmful of anyone. And then he fakes his answers to the tests, to the mental aptitude test or whatever, and then he fails. Then he's now in the nut house because he's lost his faith. He's lost his spirit because Doris. He thought that Doris asked for him to be sent away, and so he's like, I've lost. And then all this other stuff happens to help him rediscover his faith in humanity, and that unlocks all these emotional treasures that I enjoy. So many more treasures than in Christmas Story, Home Alone, Christmas Vacation. Just kidding. Those are valuable in different ways. But anyway, I love it. I think it's awesome. Ashley, what are you thinking?
I like that movie. I don't know. The cameos of like the little, like behind the scenes of like the judge and his advisor and like the attorney and his wife and like the judge and his wife and like those little scenes like are hilarious to me.
They're good. My favorite's what's his name? The doctor where he was gonna have the wife stay in like Schneerville or something like that. I don't remember what it is. But they were gonna have him stay with
the triple martini.
Yeah. Oh, but he right here. But he he had to drink. Yeah, he had to drug her up, which I don't know what that message is, but he had to get her to agree to let Santa Claus stay with them, and she's on the phone holding the phone upside down, and she's like, by the time she gets it right, she's like, "We'd love to have Santa Claus come and stay with us. It would be lovely," or whatever. It's just so funny the way she says it. We'd love to have Santa Claus come and stay with us. Yeah, it's really good. Great characters. All of them, even like Alfred, he's just so heartful. And then he's this little assistant at the party at the end. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but mostly it's Doris and Susie. When I found it interesting, if I remember correctly, Chris, the guy that plays Chris, the actor that plays Santa Claus, he got an Academy Award, I think, for Best Supporting Actor. Then Mr. Gailey and Doris were the leads. I never looked at it that way. I was always like, oh, he's like the side character, but he's really the lead, and this was his biggest movie. He had done 3 movies with O'Hara before this, but that was their third movie, or this was their third movie together. But like, he had done other big movies, but this was his biggest because it was an instant classic that Josh doesn't feel is important enough to watch every year. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally teasing you.
No, you're right. I don't. I mean, it's a good movie, it's a good message, but there's lots of those. This just isn't in my repertoire. Like I said, I mean, the old movies, This or A Wonderful Life, I pick A Wonderful Life. So
I don't like that movie. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time maybe, but I just don't like it. It's not nothing. I don't feel anything for it. Mr. Shellhammer's the name, and Dr. Pierce is the guy from Bellevue. But let me read this last thing before we wrap up. This is what she says about faith at the very end. When the trial's over and Susie says, Doris is like, you have to believe that this is Santa Claus. And she says, well, she doesn't want to, but Doris says, Oh, because he didn't get. She goes to the party. That's what they go to the Christmas party at the end, and she was looking for a note or whatever. Talking about the saying that she'd have that house that she asked for, and I like how the response that Chris gives her when she asked for the house. And this is the way he'll prove that he's Santa Claus. He's looking at it, and she's like, "You can't get it for me," because he looks discouraged, and he's like, what are you gonna like? What would you do with a big house like that? And she's like, I'll live with it with my mother. I don't like our apartment. I want to live there and have a nice backyard where I can play and all this stuff. And she's connecting with her childhood vision. She wants to play. She doesn't want to live in an apartment in the industrial area of the city. She wants to play. The bubblegum scene, same thing. It's showing her being playful, that she's coming out and showing signs that she is a little kid in real life. You know, she's not just as hardened, manipulated, too grown up for her own good child. And so now at the end, she didn't get the present. She's discouraged. Everyone else is on board. And then Doris says, I was wrong when I told you that. You must believe that in Mr. Kris Kringle, to keep right on doing it. You must have faith in him. And she goes, but he didn't give me that just doesn't make sense, Mommy. And then Doris says, this is what you're talking about, Josh. Faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. And just because things don't turn out the way you want them to the first time, you've still got to believe in people. She says, I found that out. And then Susie says, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I was like, and she's like, exactly. I'm like, that doesn't correlate at all. That's a stupid line. That's not at all what Doris just said.
It was the girl taking that heavy quote and relating it to something that she could understand.
That's fine. I'm just like that. Yeah, I don't. I just whatever.
But Tim can't give any grace to young kids. He's like, no,
I hated it. Susie the whole time. Susie's letter unlocked the magic. I just praise them both now. Just because I didn't like that line, I'm like that. What she just revealed. Anyway, but no, that's sometimes Tim is like that old cartoon, that old John Lovitz cartoon, The Critic. It stinks. It stinks. Anyway, that line though, this is what I like. That it's about belief and faith. And you could look at this as like faith in God or whatever, same concept. Faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to, and you have to believe in people. And I think that's interesting, that a way we can demonstrate our faith like in God is believing in people and looking for the good in people and helping to inspire and do good ourselves as people. That's the evidence of God. In this movie, that's the evidence of Santa Claus being real. Because again, he didn't do anything miraculous. At the end of the movie, they have his cane's in the corner of the house by the fireplace, and she's like, oh, it's just a coincidence. Or he's like, I prove the whole world that that he's Santa Claus. And then he sees the cane. He's like, or maybe I didn't do such a great thing. Maybe because he really was Santa Claus. And at that moment, they're like finally actually convinced that he may have been real. That's awesome. It's good writing. But that's a good message. That's what I like about it too. That we have to believe in people, look for the good in people, and that's how we can inspire faith in others. And that's what Doris was trying to do for Susie. That's what Mr. Gailey was trying to do for Doris, and Mr. Gailey and Alfred and others. They were already just naturally good, inspired people, including Mr. Macy and Mr. Gimble. They were both, in it for themselves, for the business angle of the goodwill from Santa Claus, but they were still seeing the good that came out of it, where they were trying to fight for each other who was going to pay for the X-ray machine for Chris. And then he says, and Mr. Macy's like, well, if you get it, I can get it at cost. And it's like, you get it here, you get a discount. I'm like, when do they sell X-ray machines at Macy's?
You can get anything through me.
I guess. Anyway, I think that's the main message, and I love that. It's not about parenting and all that stuff. That's in there, but the real message is looking for the good and having faith. And if you don't succeed, try again. Thanks, Susie. Thanks for that wonderful insight. Anyway, any final thoughts? I'll let you guys go to sleep because you guys are tired.
No, I mean, I think that, like I said, this is a movie. I wanted to talk about it because I do think it is a classic. Mm-hmm. I do think it is one that if you haven't seen it, I don't know where you've been, but you should.
Well, if you haven't seen the original, that's the question.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely. Well, yeah, you definitely need to see the original Miracle on 34th Street. It's just a part of our history. I mean, I think that's the thing that too. You brought up the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade, which still goes on. I don't know how big it is now, but I do remember as a kid it being a big deal, and certainly back then it was a huge deal. So it's a part of our history, is the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and all of those things, and um, so yeah, I think this is just really a historical film, a classic historical Christmas film that everyone should watch at least once, if you're a lover of film in general.
Yeah. I was just about the parade. I think one of the biggest things that it's known for now is that's where you get little routines for upcoming Broadway plays and things that are new shows that are starting. That's where Wicked. I remember the year Wicked was coming out. That started there, and they had the performance at the Macy's Day Parade. Newsies did the same thing. Mary Poppins did the same thing. Wicked or Spider-Man did, even though that was a big flop. Like a lot of the new plays on Broadway, the big numbers, they're one of their big highlights is performing at Macy's and in front of the store. So it's still a pretty big deal. And now modern Mace or things are Baby Yoda, Grogu, and SpongeBob and Pikachu and all this nonsense. Oh, boring. Would you ever go if you guys get?
Yeah,
I've never been. I would
been,
love
Ashley?
to go. I had a friend. Have you
Go
been,
ahead, Josh.
Ashley?
No.
Oh, I was just gonna say I've never been, but I had a friend who just went this year, and he looked like he had a really great time. I wanted to ask him because I'm curious if I've heard of people who did like New York during New Year's Eve and have said like it's an absolute madhouse and not worth it. Because you just have to sit there for like 12 hours, no bathrooms, that type of thing. I wanted to ask him because he took his whole family, his kids and everybody, and I wanted to ask him if he felt like it was if it was worth it or if it was a bust. He was out there for a whole week and they spent a bunch of time going to see the Rockettes and doing all the Christmas stuff, and I think he had a good time with that, but I'm curious about the parade itself.
I think it'd only be fun if you could be close enough to where the perform, and it's not just there, but where they stop and do like the skits and stuff on certain positions or corners or whatever.
I've actually thought I have it kind of on the Thanksgiving Day Parade is not on my bucket list, but New Year's Eve in New York is. I've said if I was ever going to do it, I would want a hotel with a balcony overlooking it. I don't want to be down there with all the riffraff.
Well, it's like
I'll go out afterwards, like after the ball drops. I'd have no problem going out to like whatever, going out dancing or whatever, or going doing karaoke, whatever you want to do, all hours of the night. But as far as like sitting out there for 12, 14 hours in the cold just to watch the ball drop and hear Mariah Carey sing whatever again the 100th time or whatever C-list early 2000 musician they can get to sing, like I would just rather be in a hotel room and watch it.
Right. Well, it's like the Seinfeld episode about that, where they were like, they had a friend who had a apartment on the parade route and they were having a party. So that's the only reason that they were going to go. Ashley, you've been though?
No, I haven't been, but I want to go.
You would
and go? I was just saying, it's like, I have an acquaintance who was actually there this year too, but her boyfriend had an apartment that was like 2 things down from where the performances were. So she's like, we don't have to wait outside. We don't have to do anything. Like,
jeez.
So yeah, so I don't know. I was going to try and reach out to her and see how that was, but I haven't. So, but yeah, it's like, I would love to go. Cause like every year I want to watch the parade, and every year it's like more and more difficult.
How long? I'm just Googling how long the route is. 2.5 miles precision. That's a long way.
It's a long parade.
So 34. So turns east onto Central South Park and proceeds south on 6th Avenue to West 34th Street. So is that what Macy's is on? Is that why the movie's called Miracle on 34th Street?
Probably. It does show you the street sign.
So. Right. I thought it was publicity. I always thought that the house at the end of the movie was on 34th Street. That's because that's where the miracle happens. End is on Oakley. Yeah, because they're giving directions. She says turn left up here, and he's giving the names of the street. Like in four, and she says in four stops, turn left or whatever. I thought maybe one of those stops was 34th Street, and so because that's where the miracle happens. I thought that was the whole punchline at the end. Otherwise, I was like the miracle being like just him being in town, like whatever. Not criticizing the name; it's cute. Anyway, yeah, I wouldn't go. I just don't care. I mean, I care. It would be entertaining, but I don't think it'd be worth the hassle. Even if you were there a block away or whatever, can you imagine how bad to fill up those balloons, to set up the bands, like all that? Like, there's just so much stuff for miles and miles, I'm sure. And I can't imagine the hassle. And New York is already busy, and then they're blocking everything off for that. And it's going to be even worse. And people walk around anyway. I don't know. I'd have to already be there and not have anywhere to go for like 2 days for me to think it'd be worth it. But it'd be fun to see the shows. I don't care about the balloons. Anyway, well, that's our discussion on the 34th Street miracle that happened 75 years ago, according to Life magazine, and they're never wrong. Good book, too. If you don't want to watch the movie, then if you don't want to find the black and white version, you can read the brown and black print and enjoy that. So that's it. Final thoughts? You guys good? Happy? Discussed?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Miracle on 34th Street. It's a classic. I watch it every year. Ashley watches it every year. Josh watches it some years, but it's still good. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Saints on the Cinemas. See ya. And buffering and ending.